Hello everyone. Welcome to the Talks tent. It's a pretty tough act to follow, Bill Oddie, but never mind. It was great. What he had to say was really exciting, and hopefully what I have to say will actually follow on from that if you were listening to Bill. First of all, a little bit about me. I'm not an international superstar like Bill. I'm a lonely engineer. I've worked on a few different projects. I've designed a roof which was 1 kilometre across. So that's probably from one end of the Festival of Nature to the other end of the Festival of Nature. I've designed a roof that big in Abu Dhabi, and I designed the extension or worked on the extension to the new Tate Modern, which is being built in London at the moment. But the projects that I'm most proud of, and the reason I'm talking to you today as an engineer, are the projects which I think have made a real difference. So for example, I designed a new building in my old school, which was a really proud moment for me. I love my school, and they taught me a huge amount, and it was great to go and design them a building. It wasn't any old building, it was made from timber, wood, and it was made from earth, and it's won lots of awards, which is really nice. And I love using unusual materials. I love using materials which are doing something to change the world rather than using the materials that everybody else is wanting to use. About 6 months ago, I made this crazy decision to go full-time into lecturing. So I now teach 18 to 21-year-olds how to design buildings, and I teach them how to change the world by using different materials, not always designing with the same materials. And I'm going to be talking about that as I talk this afternoon. I also, in my spare time, because I have lots of it, as well as having 3 small children, well, smallish, medium-sized children, I also run a record label, and I write comics, and I'm in some bands, and I don't really like sitting around and just getting bored, so I like to stay busy. So I like to do lots of things, but the thing that I'm most excited about is I'm trying to think what the best way to describe this is. I think the best way to put it is I'm an apprentice world changer. So I'm passionate about changing the world. I'm passionate about leaving the world better when I die than when I came into it. And that's not an easy thing to do, and that's not a journey that it feels particularly like someone can just say to me, right, James, here you go, there's the manuscript, you follow those 4 steps and you'll do it. So I'm kind of learning as I go today. But what I wanted to talk to you today about was about that, how to change the world. Now, as I said, I've got 3 children. They are 11, 9 and 5. Now, as a parent, one of my best bits of the day is when I do bedtime stories. And some of you guys, if you're parents, you'll be able to kind of understand that. And as I've got 3 children, I've done 3,000 nights of bedtime stories, approximately. 3 children, bearing in mind various ages. I've probably read about 10,000 stories to my children over the last 10 years, give or take. And I obviously don't own 3,000 stories. So what happens is I've started to read the same stories over and over and over and over again. And any parent here will know that feeling of, oh my goodness, do you really want that book again? And so naturally, I've had to kind of go into this state where I've tried to find deeper meaning in children's stories just to save my sanity as much as anything else. And what I'd like to do with you is share some of those stories with you this afternoon. Now, before I show you the first book, I'd just like to say I work at Bristol University. It's a very highly renowned and prestigious university. We have an extremely good library, and you can imagine the look of fear and shock of the head librarian's face when I requested that he would get me this book here, Not Now Bernard, for the library. Because this is not your standard engineering textbook. But that's the book that I want to read to you now, because I read this book with my children lots and lots of times. Now, just to warn you, this book is not it's a children's book, but it's actually quite a terrifying book. It involves awful things, so please just be careful. Beware that this book is a little bit exciting. Okay, here is Bernard, and now I'll also say I have voices. Obviously, all parents have voices when they read to their children. I'm too embarrassed to do those voices today. That would be too much. But I will read you the story. "Hello, Dad," said Bernard. "Not now, Bernard," said his father. "Hello, Mother," said Bernard. "Not now, Bernard," said his mother. "There's a monster in the garden, and it's going to eat me," said Bernard. "Not now, Bernard," said his mother. Bernard went into the garden. "Hello, monster," he said to the monster. Now let's just pause here. Come on, Bernard, what are you thinking? You know, there's a monster in the garden, it's going to eat you, and off you wander. Oh dear. Okay, anyway, no more Bernard, sadly. The monster ate Bernard up, every bit. Then the monster went indoors. "Roar!" went the monster behind Bernard's mother. "Not now, Bernard," said Bernard's mother. The monster bit Bernard's father. "Not now, Bernard," said Bernard's father. "Your dinner's ready," said Bernard's mother. She put the dinner in front of the television. The monster ate the dinner. Then it watched the television. Then it read one of Bernard's comics and broke one of his toys. "Go to bed. I've taken up your milk," called Bernard's mother. The monster went upstairs. "But I'm a monster," said the monster. "Not now, Bernard," said Bernard's mother. "Oh my goodness, it finishes there. How can it finish there? What happens next? Does anyone know what happens next?" I've been asking this question for years. What happens next? Does the monster get hungry in the middle of the night and go looking for a midnight snack, and Bernard's parents don't make it to the next day? Or do Bernard's parents wake up in the morning and find out the shocking truth that their son has now been eaten and replaced by a monster? Or, me and my son were discussing another option, which is actually the parents continue to ignore Bernard, and the only time they realise that he's gone is when the school photo comes back, and rather than Bernard, there's a monster in it. We don't know. We're left hanging. Oh my goodness. Now, I want to balance that story with another story. This is written by a less famous children's author, a chap called Richard Rogers, slightly more famous for designing buildings like the Millennium Dome, the Pompidou Centre. And Richard Rogers wrote this little piece here, and it says, "Despite all our new wealth, material and intellectual, most of the world's inhabitants are denied the opportunity to lead decent lives. The swollen stomachs and shriveled faces of third world children, the cold and squalor that our pensioners have to endure, the increasing number of people who live in boxes and doorways stands as an indictment of a society which has the capacity to eradicate poverty but prefers to turn its back. And beyond the exploitation and injustice, which is so central a feature of our civilization, looms the prospect of ecological disaster. Our predicament now is that the means to our emancipation threaten our very existence and the existence of other species." Now, I'm sure those words bother you. Those words bother me because they're not nice words. Actually, some of the things Bill Oddie had to say were not good things. He kind of left quite a solemn mood at the end of his talk because he was talking about the extinction of birds and the fact that their numbers are dwindling rapidly. These are not easy things to take on board, but the thing that really bothers me about what Richard Rogers has written, this famous architect, this man who many people, if they don't know him, they almost certainly know his incredible buildings. The thing that bothers me about that book is it wasn't written this year, and it wasn't written last year. It was actually written 25 years ago. And when he wrote these words, it wasn't like he was the only person who knew this. Actually, everyone knew this 25 years ago, and what's happened is we've chosen not to do anything about it. Richard Rogers, who designs beautiful buildings, he's chosen not to do anything about it. He carries on designing the same kind of buildings, but so have the rest of us. Certainly those people who, when this was written 25 years ago, were in a position to make a choice. Some of you guys, I can appreciate, maybe weren't in that position. But for the rest of us, you know, we've chosen to continue living this life of saying, not now. You see, like Bernard's parents, we kind of are so busy living our own lives, aren't we? We're so busy doing our things. We're so busy worrying about our problems that we keep saying, not now. And I suspect for the vast majority of us, it's not that we don't think those things are bad. But, you know, of course those things are bad. I'm not ready yet to deal with them. I'm not going to do that yet. Maybe one day in the future, when I've got time, when I'm rich enough, when I've got, you know, enough spare time, or I've got, you know, my children have grown up, or I've paid off my mortgage, whatever it is, there's always an excuse. And we're always saying, not now. Just as Bernard's parents were saying, not now, Bernard. We're saying, not now to all these things that we need doing. And to me, I wanted to just share with you a story of someone who chose not to say not now, but wanted to do something. And it's the story of my son, so it's a very personal story. And Max is 11, and he, about 2 years ago, like most parents, we walk to school, and I don't know if most parents, Max, don't take offense to this, but you slightly dread the walk to school because you know that for the next 15 minutes you're going to hear about the latest Mario game or the latest Pokemon, and you're like, oh my goodness, okay, I don't really understand what you're talking about, but I'll just do my best to listen. But suddenly, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Max started saying, it really bothers me that they cut down the rainforest. Why do they do that? Why do people do that? In fact, it doesn't just bother me, it makes me really cross. And I don't know where it came from, but somewhere, whether from school or from watching children's TV or just from, I don't know where it came from, but somewhere he got this idea that it's not okay to chop down the rainforest and we need to stop it. And that went on for a day or two, and I thought, yeah, Max, this is great. You've really got something there. And then it went on for another day or two, and then it went on for a week or two. And I think by the end of the second month of him saying over and over again, this really bothers me, I said, do you know, actually, I'm bored of hearing you say this bothers you. What I want to know is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to make a difference? And we kind of scratched our head, and he's only 10 or 11 now, but 10 or 9 at the time. 9. You were 9 at the time. Okay, thanks, Max. And so we and ahed about it, and we realized that actually you can buy an acre of rainforest to protect it. And that seemed like, at the age of 9, that seemed like a good thing to do. So we did some research, and we found this charity called the World Land Trust. And for £100, you can buy and protect an acre of rainforest. And partly I wanted to protect an acre of rainforest, but partly, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, Max, I wanted to prove to Max that at the age of 10, you can actually make a difference. You don't have to wait until you're Bill Gates and you've got £30 billion sitting in your bank account waiting to be spent. You can choose to make a difference at any age. And that's true of everybody and anybody in this room and in this world. We can all choose to make a difference. So we discussed, right, how are we going to make this £100 to buy an acre of rainforest? And we discussed car wash. What view of car wash? No, why not? Too much? Too much hard work. There we go. What about cooking cakes? Would you like to cook cakes? No, why not? Too much hard work. Okay, so we wanted to go for big bucks without much work. So that was the plan. So we came up with this idea, and Max decided he wanted to write a comic and sell this comic to raise money for the rainforest. So he wrote to a load of different people, and he produced this comic called Bark. This is issue 1, which went on sale last October. So far, Max has raised £600. Now, £600 is 6 acres of rainforest. Now, for the adults here, that may not seem like a big deal, £600. But let me just couch it in these terms. Max gets £1 pocket money a week. So in 50 weeks, he earns £500. £600 is the equivalent of 12 years' salary. Now, all you adults there, you work out what your salary is and think, if I could raise 12 years' worth of that by doing something, that would be pretty exciting, wouldn't it? We might feel like we could make a difference by doing that. So I love that example because it's really simple, but actually, all of us, and what happens is sometimes we get overwhelmed. So Bill Oddie, he threw out so many different problems and challenges. Sometimes we're overwhelmed. We say, I'm only one person and I can't do everything. And of course, we all know that's true, but we are all somebody and we can all choose to do something. And so each one of us can choose, what is it that bothers you? Max was really upset about deforestation and he chose to do something about it. What is it that bothers you? Everyone has something that's different. Everyone has their own thing that they think, do you know what? I know that I can actually do something about that. And that would be my challenge. Choose something that you think I could do something about that and choose to do it. Not say, not now, but choose to do it. Now, I'm not going to pause there because there's another story, and this one is one of my all-time favorites. And it's called Stuck. Does anyone know this book called Stuck? This is a brilliant story. You know it. Is it a good book? Yeah. Don't. Amazing. I love that you're talking. I was just going to say, don't say the punchline, because for those people who don't know it, it is so funny. Now, I can't see anyone eating. I was going to say, if you're eating, just please empty your mouth, because you will laugh, and I would hate for that food to go onto the back of anyone's head. But fortunately, we're not in that position. Okay, so this is about a boy called Floyd. And it says, it all began when Floyd got his kite stuck in a tree. He tried pushing and swinging, but it wouldn't come unstuck. The trouble really began when he threw his favourite shoe to knock the kite loose, and that got stuck too. He threw up his other shoe to knock down his favourite shoe, and unbelievably, that got stuck as well. In order to knock down his other shoe, Floyd fetched Mitch. And if you can't see the picture that carefully, Mitch is a cat. Cats get stuck in trees all the time, but this was getting ridiculous. Floyd fetched a ladder. He was going to sort this out once and for all. And up he threw it. I'm sure you can guess what happened. The ladder was borrowed from a neighbour and would definitely need to be put back before anyone noticed. And in order to do so, Floyd flung a bucket of paint at it. And wouldn't you know, the bucket of paint got stuck. Then Floyd tried a duck to knock down the bucket of paint, a chair to knock down the duck, his friend's bicycle to knock down the chair, the kitchen sink to knock down his friend's bicycle, their front door to knock down the kitchen sink, the family car to knock down their front door, the milkman to knock down the family car, an orangutan to knock down the milkman, who surely had somewhere else to be, a small boat to knock down the orangutan, a big boat to knock down the small boat, a rhinoceros to knock down the big boat, a long-distance lorry to knock down the rhinoceros, the house across the street to knock down the long-distance lorry, a lighthouse to knock down the house no longer across the street, a curious well in the wrong place at the wrong time to knock down the lighthouse, and they all got stuck. A fire engine was passing and heard all the commotion. The firemen stopped to see if they could help at all. And up they went, first the engine, followed by the firemen, one by one. And there they stayed, stuck between the orangutan and one of the boats. Fireman would definitely be noticed missing, and Floyd knew he'd be in big trouble. Then he had an idea and went to find a saw. And that was it. Oh no, sorry. Here we go. He lined it up as best he could and held it up into the tree. And that was it. There was no more room in the tree, and the kite came unstuck. Floyd was delighted. He had forgotten all about his kite and put it to use immediately, enjoying the rest of his day very much. That night, Floyd fell asleep exhausted, though before he did, he could have sworn there was something he was forgetting. And there's the fireman saying, hang on a minute, lads, I've got a great idea, with everybody stuck up that tree. Now, the first thing I'd like to say is a little advert for Bristol University is, I'm sure you'll agree, Floyd is clearly not a Bristol University student, okay? I think that's fair to say. Now, before I talk about stuck, I'd just like to make a confession. I'd like to make a confession to all of you. I'd prefer it if it didn't go any further than these four walls. It's quite a personal confession. When I tell you what it is, you'll understand why it is a personal confession. I have a deep and probably quite unhealthy love for concrete, okay? And I design a lot of concrete buildings. I can do all the sums of concrete. I know how to do all of that stuff, but that is not what I'm talking about. I have a deep, tactile, passionate love for concrete. When I see a concrete building, the Colston Hall extension, excellent example, those beautiful big concrete columns, I just have to wrap my arms around them. Normally people aren't looking. If there's people around, I might just let the back of my hand brush against the concrete column. But generally, if there's no one looking, I love the soft, cold, hard feeling, soft and hard anyway, feeling of concrete. So what I'm going to say now does not come from a place, I'm not one of these engineers who, I hate concrete, what I'm saying now comes from a place of actually I love concrete, it's amazing. You can build anything. The entire world is pretty much made out of concrete. Do you know that after water, concrete is by far the most used material in this whole world, okay? I haven't done the statistics, but I suspect we use more concrete in our life than we eat bread. Concrete is everything. You're sat on concrete. Okay, we don't eat concrete. Let's not go there. But concrete is really important. But the problem with concrete is obviously it comes at an environmental cost. To make concrete requires a lot of energy. Energy produces CO2. We're suddenly aware of this big problem. I say suddenly aware. Let's face it, we've been aware for 30 years of the big problems that CO2 create. We've just tried to avoid them and say not now. Okay? So as an engineer, I've got this trouble because I love concrete and I want to use concrete because I can solve pretty much any problem and build any building out of it, but I'm also aware of the environmental damage that it does. And so over the last 5 years, I've been doing research into how can I make concrete more sustainable? How can I reduce the amount of energy in concrete? And as I was thinking, and actually as I was reading this book, this children's book, I had this eureka moment. You see, engineers are stuck, just as Floyd is stuck. Our problem is that we can't solve the problem of building more and more and more. We have to use more and more concrete. Every year, more concrete is used than the year before. The problem is escalating. It's not getting better. And you see, we all laughed. Who laughed at Floyd? Who thought he was daft? Anyone thought Floyd was being a bit silly? Yeah, what an idiot. Come on, let's be honest. But that's what we do. That's what we do. Engineers are doing it all the time. We're just as stuck as Floyd is because we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. We think that is the only way to do this. That is the only way to build a building. It's the only way to make a road is by pouring loads of concrete. And so I suddenly came to this realization that actually maybe rather than trying to tweak concrete, I need to stop using concrete completely. And so I've been on this journey where I'm saying, well, actually, what else can we do? And I'm trying to not just do it myself, because as an engineer, I'll probably design 30 buildings in my lifetime. So I want to teach as many people as possible to do it as well, so that rather than 30 buildings, you know, the next 30,000 buildings that get built are not made from concrete. That would be incredible, wouldn't it? And honestly, I love concrete, and I haven't got anything against concrete, but just so often it's not the right solution, and we could do things in a different way, which is actually benefiting the environment. And so what we need to do is we need to make this change. You see, Floyd has a problem and he keeps trying to solve it by doing the same thing over and over again. Okay? But he needs to make this change, and we call that change a shift in paradigm. And just to give you a couple of examples of a shift in paradigm, one is for adults. Okay, now I don't know where you guys work, if you work, but if any of you have ever been in an office, okay, these days offices are open plan. You sit and there's all the desks and there's all the computers and you're all together. Now that hasn't always been the way of the world. For many years people used to sit in their own offices, and I'm at Bristol University, so in that respect we're about 50 years behind the times because I still sit in my own office. Okay, but for many years that was everybody's experience. And what happened is one day someone said, well, what happens if we don't have walls in this office and we just let everyone, you know, talk to each other and do all these weird things that you wouldn't normally expect in an office environment. And people stopped putting walls into offices, and suddenly now we've reached a point where every office that we build is open plan. There's been this shift in paradigm from one set of ideas to another. Another example, this one is for the children. Believe it or not, children, there was a time when you had a screen and you touched it, nothing happened. Okay? There was this time when that was true. You touch a screen, and in fact there was something that happened. You got this very nasty static electric shock. Okay, that was it. That was all that happened. We've had a shift in paradigm in how we interact with technology, haven't we? We've seen this sudden change. We've moved from one way of doing things to another way of doing things. And we need to be doing the same thing, in not just in engineering, but in whatever it is we're doing. And I just got a couple more stories I'd like to tell you. The first is that a year and a half ago, I decided to run a marathon. Now, I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking, yeah, you did that easy. I can just by looking at you, you look so young and fit. I'm sure you just did that. Okay, and I'm going to break that bubble for you. I actually found it really hard. Okay, I found it incredibly hard. And in fact, because of my wonderful athletic physique, I decided that I'm probably only ever going to run one marathon in my lifetime. So rather than running an easy one, I thought, I'm going to go for the hardest marathon that this country can offer me. And I found one, which is down in the Dorset coast. And this marathon is 27.3 miles, because surely if you're going to run a marathon, you'd much rather like add an extra mile at the end, wouldn't you? I mean, After 26 miles, you're just desperate to run another one. And not only is it 27 rather than 26 miles long, but the amount of uphill there is, if I'd put it all together, I would have gone more than a mile into the air by the end of my marathon. So I've run uphill a mile, and I've run an extra mile on top of my marathon. That was the marathon I chose as my first ever and probably last ever marathon. Now, I had 2 aims for that marathon. Okay, let's go for 3 aims. My first aim was to not die, which I think is a pretty good aim. My second aim was to get all the way round and back to the finish. And my third aim was to not come last. Okay, those were my 3 aims. So at mile 16, I'm at the back. I can't see anyone anywhere. And I reached that point where I've realized I'm further out than I am to go back. So I've got to keep going. I can't do it. I know that I can't do it. I definitely can't finish this thing. But I keep running, mostly because I'm cold. This is the middle of December, so I wasn't running it in a nice sunny time of year. It was freezing cold, and I just keep running because there is no other choice. And I get to the last checkpoint, and I'm already a half an hour late for the last checkpoint. So I know that's it. I finished the race. I don't have to run anymore. And they were, oh, welcome, welcome. And there's these things, they have lots of food at the checkpoints. I know I'm the last person, so I eat everything they have left, obviously. And a phone call comes through to the guy running the checkpoint, and it's the race organizer. And the race organizer is saying, have you got, that's it, your checkpoint is closed. And he's like, well, I've got a guy here, and he's not on the floor, and he's still breathing. Can I send him through? So the guy goes, oh, go on then. So I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, I had no idea I was even going to be able to finish this thing. So I head off on that last section, and with 200 meters to go, I catch up with the 2 people in front of me, and I run that last 200 meters as fast as I can. My family are all cheering me on. All the other spectators have gone home hours ago. I mean, hours ago, but my family are cheering me on. And I don't just finish the marathon, I don't just not die, but I also don't come last, which was a fantastic achievement, of which I'm very, very grateful. But the point of that story is, actually, the marathon on the day was a great event, but there is no way I could run a marathon without training. And actually, I trained really, really, really hard for that marathon. I ran lots of 15, 20-mile runs. I live in Bath, and there's quite a few good hills in Bath. I've run all of them, absolutely all of them, and I've tried to do all of them in one go as well, because you needed to do all of that preparation. What on earth has that got to do with stuck? Here's the thing, okay? If you're going to change paradigms, if you're going to change the way people think about the world, if you're going to, Bill Oddie was talking about palm trees and deforestation. If we're going to switch that back so we start creating more biodiversity and reducing the amount of palm tree plantations, that kind of shift in paradigm requires a lot more effort and a lot more training and a lot more hard work than running a marathon does. And that kind of thing is actually a lifetime's worth of work. So Not Now Bernard is about not just saying, I'm going to do something like Max did, and actually Max did it relatively quickly, but actually it's about saying, I'm really bothered about this, and I really want to do something about this, and I'm really willing to just keep working at it and doing more and more and more work to try and solve these problems. So running a marathon is probably quite a good analogy. I just want to finish with one last story, and I hope that's okay. I have no idea how I'm doing for time. But as a school child, I found some parts of school really easy, but I found a particular part of school really tricky, and that was spelling, okay? Now, you guys probably all find spelling easy. I found spelling really hard. I had to go to special lessons at school because my spelling was not very good, apparently, so it needed to get better. And my mum is here, so I'm so glad that she's here to hear this. And so it can only have been out of a desire to build character that my mum suggested on a regular basis that we play Scrabble together. Because I found Scrabble quite tough. But here's the thing, if you're an adult and you've ever played Scrabble with a child, okay, there's this scenario where they've got their 7 letters there and they're looking at them. And it gets to kind of 3 minutes and they're still looking at them. And it gets to 5 minutes and you're like, come on. And you reach this point, you know you shouldn't because it's going to make things worse, but you just look at their letters and you go, oh, do you know, if you just put that letter there and there and there, you get 68 points. Now, to me, it was very simple. What that meant is, right, I can't do that. There's no way I can do your suggestion. So now what I've got to do is either find a better word, or I've got to accept that I'm going to put down a worse word. But whatever I do, I cannot put the word down that's been suggested to me. Now, the reason I say this story is because actually, as an engineer, that happens a lot. We see people come up with great ideas for sustainability, and often there's this intellectual pride. Our engineers are not the best paid profession, but we have this amazing intellectual pride. We are passionate and proud of what we achieve intellectually. But we kind of look at someone's idea and we go, yeah, that's all right, but I could do better. We have this kind of innate, whatever it is, I think I could go one step better. But what happens is actually we end up doing nothing because we don't want to follow, we don't want to kind of reproduce what other people do. And actually, as engineers and as people, we need to learn to be humble. We need to learn to actually, when people are shifting paradigms, because it's not always us that shift the paradigms, we need to be able to see other people who are doing it as well and say, do you know what you're doing is amazing. That is the best score you're going to get on Scrabble. I'm going to admit that, and I'm just going to go for what you're doing because what you're doing is really incredible. So I think there are times where we need to shift paradigms. We need to be the kind of the leader. We need to invest in being the leader. But there are times where we need to look at what other people are saying and we say, wow, that is incredible. I want to be on board with doing that. So that's the kind of the end of what I wanted to say. Just to summarize in 3 very simple sentences. First of all, choose what you're passionate about and choose to engage in it now. Secondly, don't expect things to change overnight. Your life's work will probably be changing the world if that's what you're passionate about doing. It's not something that happens in the blink of an eye. That's your vocation. That is what you will need to do. And thirdly, sometimes we're going to have to be humble, and even if it's your life's work, you might have to say, do you know what I'm doing is okay, but what you're doing is incredible, and I'm going to actually choose to back you rather than do my thing. Any questions? Time's up. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for staying. And enjoy the rest of the talks.